Howdy folks, I'm Dan Gross, and welcome to Season 3 of the Rochester Indie Musician Spotlight. This episode is brought to you by Bernunzio Uptown Music. Located in Rochester's East End, Bernunzio has been providing Rochester and the world with quality vintage, new, and used instruments since 1976. Bernunzio also offers workshops, live events, and jam sessions. This season, just like last season, we're filming in this warm, local, and creative space, Bop Shop Records. Located in Rochester, New York on 1460 Monroe Avenue, Bop Shop Records has been your home for jazz, blues, classic rock, and Americana in vinyl for the past 35 years. Joining me today is Tyler Westcott. Both as an excellent soul musician and frontman for Folk Faces, Tyler has cultivated a sound that is truly Rochester. It's something that's best described as folk jazz, with lyrical Great American Songbook melodies, but with themes of jazz and Americana throughout. We brought him in to talk to him about his debut solo self-titled record that just came out and the little Western New York tour he's doing to promote it. Thank you so much for watching this episode. We hope you enjoy. Tyler, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the first thing I want to say is, when did you start singing and when did you pick up a guitar?
Well, I started singing at a very young age, I'm sure, and then around 13 I picked up a guitar.
Yeah.
And I was already playing in the school band. I played trumpet, and then I moved on to guitar. Me and my brother started playing music at the same time, and his dad played music, and my mom played a little guitar, kind of strummed some chords. My stepdad played trumpet. It wasn't really a musical family, but we did play a little.
Right.
So, but I got grounded by my mom because I was a naughty little child.
Yeah.
And she took away the radio and the television, and, you know, she said, you can't go anywhere and do anything, but there was a guitar there. So being a young punk rocker, I wrote some angry songs and started from the ground up. So the legend began. Sure.
So, something like that. So you don't do punk now?
Sometimes.
Sometimes? But what drew you to this Americana sound you have? Was there anything you were listening to when your mom locked you in your room that kind of drew you to Americana?
Well, I mean, her music probably inspired me, you know, more than I know. I think probably one of my first concerts ever was Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, just Bob Dylan and, you know, kind of the softer side of the folk music world, Neil Young and the stuff that she liked. And then my brother's father, Rich Croner, you know, he played in a band and played at coffee houses and had gigs, and I would always go see him. And I kind of stole his whole repertoire, which is kind of a Americana, folk, and, you know, classic rock kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because your sound has sort of a synthesis of a lot of other things. I think it's common in Rochester. You're not just a folk band. You can't just be a folk band or Americana band, but you have you have all these other influences as well. So did that start when you were stealing songs?
Sure. I mean, you know, I've always been a fan of a variety show and someone who can put on a lot of different hats, and you know, it keeps it interesting for yourself and your audience to kind of give a nod to all the different people who have made music all over the world.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll come back to the variety show thing a little bit because that's a theme you're incorporating into your tour. One more thing before we move on. I always think there's just this little bit of jazz touch in what you do. It's not a lot. You're not going out of your way to play any super chromatic chords, but it's maybe just a little bit on how you approach the blues or you craft a melody. Was this a conscious thing? It's like, did you take jazz lessons and started putting that in your writing?
I did. I took a year of jazz guitar lessons with Craig Snyder at Finger Lakes Community College, and he's a very talented jazz fusion player, and he just taught me how to play, you know, one chord a couple different ways, you know, and that keeps it interesting for yourself. And you know, and I play with a lot of people who play jazz and or at least, you know, appreciate it, and so I try to keep my songwriting simple, but then at other times I try to really work on it and make it pretty and nice music, or you know, a little more involved, and I'm really inspired by a lot of kind of retro early jazz, and New Orleans music and stuff like that. So I guess that's where that comes from.
And you play in a gypsy jazz group, and you do some gypsy jazz yourself, and you also do some Zydeco stuff too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little about that?
So I met my friend Sean. He was from Oswego, and he and my bandmate Dan Brodzik knew each other, and Sean's a very talented funk and blues and jazz player, and I didn't know this for a while, but I found out that he had learned by ear a lot of Django Head's 2 songs, and so I was like, hey, I love playing that stuff. I've always wanted to be, the rhythm player in like a gypsy group, and so I sing and I chop out the chords, and he takes all the crazy solos and glory, and that's a lot of fun. And then a few years ago, I met my friend and many other things. You could say I have all my eggs in one basket with this person, but his name is Ron Kowaleski, and he's an accordion player and a songwriter from Buffalo, and he's very infatuated with Cajun and Zydeco music, and I've actually been to Louisiana with him a couple times to do kind of a camp, as Cajun Zydeco music camp, and you spend a week down there with the best people in the business, and you learn it, straight from the horse's mouth. It's just like, it's very fun.
Yeah, and most people now know you as the front man for Folk Faces. Even when you do a solo show, you say Tyler Westcott of Folk Faces. So that whole group, we want to make sure we give them a shout out. Dan Brodzik on slide guitar, vocals, and harmonica. Aline Peroni on saxophone and vocals. Patrick Jackson on upright bass, and Dan Swak on percussion, vocals. And this is funny, lead washboard. He's not only the washboard player, he's the lead washboard player. Can you tell us about Folk Faces a little bit and how the sound was cultivated?
Well, it started off 4 or 5 years ago, and I had moved to Buffalo, New York from the Rochester area, and I met some people busking on the street, and I liked the music that they were playing, and so I started bugging them. I was on my way to work and riding my bike, and I started bothering them. I said, hey, what are you guys doing? What do you want to do? Hey, come hang out with me after this. Come here. We have to do something. No, can't let you get away. And then it just kept morphing, and somebody would say, oh, I know this guy, and then my buddy met this guy at the liquor store, and then and it just kept morphing, and the where we are now, the 5-piece group is it's a far cry from where it started as a trio. And so I'm actually the only founding original member of the group, and but now it's so much stronger than it ever was, and it's we play a bunch from many different genres and kind of abnormal instrumentation. We have the alto sax and distorted slide guitar kind of harmonizing and kind of being like horns, and then kind of Dan Schwach on his washboard is his auxiliary percussion adds kind of a jug bandy street music sound,
it's this really, you kind of get some brass band sounds, you get some jazz sounds in there too, and you get some Americana. So when you're doing all of your stuff, when you're being solo Tyler Westcott, when you're in Folk Faces, when you're playing Zydeco or Gypsy, is there an active effort on your part to keep everything distinct or straight, or is the longer you play, the more you find that this stuff just sort of melds together?
It kind of melds. I mean, it blurs for sure. I mean, I think that Zydeco and blues are cousins, just like Cajun music and bluegrass are cousins, or old time music, Cajun music and old time music more likely. But a lot of those players didn't only play one style of music. They worked with a lot of people. So.
Yeah, and blues is common in everything that you do, and you play the blues really well.
Thank you.
And you do a great job, and I think that's kind of your continuity thing, is that the blues is in everything that you do, even if there's like jazz blues or Americana blues. I really like that blues touch is always there. So we're talking about this sort of melding of the sound. Is this something you were going for on your record? Now, this is a 17-track record. So this is a full-length record, self-titled, his debut solo release, Tyler Westcott, and 17 tracks, 15 originals, and 2 covers. So did you have a specific goal in mind when you were putting this together? Did you say, I want this track to be this, I want this track to be this, or did you just kind of go in and cut it? What was the process?
I'd say a little bit of both, kind of, yeah. I mean, the songs I write, I tend to, in the folk tradition, borrow a lot. Mm-hmm. And,
jazz tradition, too.
Right, absolutely. And I'm like, I want to do a ragtime Red Hot Blues, or,
mm-hmm.
I want to do a kind of bluegrassy waltz, mm-hmm. or I want to do kind of a jazzy ballad, softer, or here's a rip roaring raucous kind of folk punk kind, and there was that kind, originally, but with this record it was just, please, let's just get it out. Let's just get it out, because I've been working on, I've put out a couple of records with a couple of bands, and we're still working on the Folk Faces record, and that'll be out sometime soon, but I just wanted to have something to give to people and be like, hey, I've written songs, and this is what they sound like, and this is a very accurate representation of who I am and what I do. Because I went in the studio and we were there for 3 hours. I did one take on almost every tune, and then.
Now, where'd you record?
And at my friend's space.
Oh,
and,
cool. Okay, so this is kind of a home project.
Do it yourself, yeah.
I love how all of this ties in to the whole variety show thing. And your whole tour, I'm going to run this down. He's January 23rd at Sportsman's Tavern. 24th, you're doing a house show. 25th, Al's Wine and Whiskey. 26th at Abilene, and 27th at the Roots Cafe. There are a ton of great musicians on there. We actually have a Spotlight alumnus playing on one of your shows, or a couple of them, Jackson Cavalier and Kemi Anaharo, who's coming on one of your shows. She'll be on later this season as well. Can you tell us about putting together the tour and why you picked these places?
These are all places that I've been before, mm-hmm. and I tried to drink from the same well, and people who I've played with before at different capacities and with different groups, and I just kind of wanted, because I'm a songwriter and this is kind of a songwriter tour, I wanted mm-hmm. to give other people a platform to sing their songs, and perhaps just maybe play somewhere they haven't played before. Yeah. And I just wanted to call up some of my favorite people and just give ourselves a reason to get together. And
Tyler, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You can check him out on his Western New York Tour variety show starting Monday, January 23rd, and don't forget to check out his debut solo self-titled album. I'm Dan Gross. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Rochester Indie Musician Spotlight, and we'll see you again soon.
Baby, after it starts to rain, well, I can't write you no letters, baby, if you're always around. So put your money where your mouth is, find out which way south is, and get out of town. Get out of town, oh, get out of town. Try not to set the bridges on fire, yes, keep the pavement underneath your thighs. When you ain't got a friend and the world seems black, get out of town, baby, and don't come back. We can't get recognized someplace you ain't never been. Just another stranger's face in a place nobody ever seen, where you can't take no wrong turns being chased by a hellhound. When your troubles increase, back it up and go east and get out of town. Get out of town, get out of town. Try not to set the bridges on fire, keep the pavement underneath your tires. Ain't got a friend and the world seems black. Get out of town, baby, and don't come back. You can't act too proud when you're accepting charity. Can't talk too loud about your plans if they're still imaginary. Well, I know better than to accept hand-me-downs. Oh, get the weight off your chest and head out west and get out of town. Get out of town, get out of town. Try not to set your bridges on fire and keep them underneath your thighs when you ain't got a friend and the world seems black. Get out of town, baby, and don't come back. We can't do no singing if you're always squawking. Can't do no running before you start to do some walking. So I guess you better learn to crawl down on the ground. Boys, therefore, then hit I know, then get out of town. Get out of town. Get out of town. Try not to set your bridges on fire. Keep the pavement underneath your thighs when you ain't got a friend and the world seems black. Get out of town, baby, and don't come back. Get out of town, baby, and don't come back. Get out of town, baby, and don't come back. Well, the sun is setting and my troubles are few, and I'm still forgetting the last time I saw you. But I drink like no tomorrow, forget my sorrows. Day is done, nothing left to do. Day is done, nothing left to do. Yesterday I'd hoped that today I'd be a better man. In a better way I'll live if I can. But I told so many lies, and it comes as no surprise. I'm alone again where I began. I'm alone again where I began. Well, the moon is rising, it's peeking out from behind the cloud, and I can't remember what I was sad about. I talked over it with a friend, I got through it again. Oh, I got it all out, all out. Oh, I got it all out. pretty sure there's someone at your door.